How Joe Biden's Cold War experience will shape his approach to Russia. President-elect's formative years of going toe-to-toe with the USSR on arms control hint at how he may deal with Putin. It was 1988, near the end of the Cold War, when then-Senator Joe Biden made yet another visit to the Soviet Union for talks on arms control. By that time, he felt comfortable enough in Moscow to bring a guest into the room, his teenage son. "The gentleman is interested in international affairs and diplomacy," he said, according to Victor Prokofiev, the Soviet Foreign Ministry interpreter at the meeting. A photograph from the meeting shows Biden's son seated at the head of the table as his father and Andrei Gromyko, the chairman of the presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR, discussed ratifying the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. When he enters the White House next month, Joe Biden will bring nearly half a century of foreign policy experience with him, making him one of the most seasoned envoys ever elected president. Joe knew the Soviet Union, knows Russia, has experience with Vladimir Putin, and understands what's possible and what's probably not, said former Senator Bill Bradley, who visited Moscow with him in 1979. Boasting of those credentials, Biden for a time recalled sitting briefly across from Leonid Brezhnev in the Kremlin in 1979 before negotiations with Alexei Kosygin, the Soviet premier. The Soviet president excused himself after introductions and turned the meeting over to Kosygin, Biden wrote in a 2007 memoir. But Andrei Gromyko, a historian at the University of Lille and author of a forthcoming biography of the Soviet leader, noted in a detailed look at the delegation that Brezhnev never mentions meeting those U.S. senators in his diaries. "Brezhnev was in no meeting that I was in, and I was in all the delegation meetings on that trip," said Bradley. During the Democratic primary race earlier this year, he repeatedly asserted that he was arrested in apartheid South Africa while trying to visit Nelson Mandela in prison. U.S. newspapers investigated and debunked the story, and Biden eventually acknowledged, "I wasn't arrested, I was stopped." But at the time, said Gromyko, Biden was just one tiny little cog in the Carter détente machine, sent to Moscow to help allay domestic concerns about the SALT II treaty. Few Soviet officials mention the president-elect in their memoirs, and Soviet press clippings curtly note the senators' arrivals in Leningrad and Moscow. Bradley recalled the meeting with Kosygin, which lasted 3 hours, as substantive, and said the delegates also met with foreign ministry officials and had lunch with a senior military official. But in those early trips, Biden cultivated a pugnacious style in his meetings with Soviet leaders that became his hallmark. If Donald Trump came to Moscow chasing real estate deals and Bernie Sanders sought to join the peoples of Burlington and Yaroslavl, then Biden's formative years here were the decades he spent showing he could go toe-to-toe with Kremlin officials on arms control. It is a role he'll reprise next month with Putin as the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, a deal he helped move through the Senate as vice president in 2010, is set to expire. "I'm from Delaware and we have a saying, you can't shit a shitter," Biden told Kosygin in 1979, Levin recalled. "If we had the Biden of the 1970s and 80s, in the White House, people would not be worried," said Sergei Karaganov, a prominent foreign policy expert who said he had played a minor role in organizing trips attended by Biden in the 1980s. "I think the prospects for Soviet-American relations are good," Biden says earnestly before jumping into shop talk on SALT II. "It ultimately failed, but both sides abided by limits on the number and type of missiles until 1986. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1980 sent relations between the White House and the Kremlin into a deep freeze." Biden only returned to Moscow in 1984, joining then-Senator William Cohen to bring a private message from Ronald Reagan regarding a new approach to arms control. Biden returned with a delegation and his son in tow in 1988 to discuss ratification of the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty with Gromyko, his Soviet counterpart. Biden's next big visit to Moscow would not come for another 20 years, by which time Putin had dominated Russia's politics for a decade and even a reset of relations had soured.